but you gotta maintain.
I really appreciate you being a guest. If you could just introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into it, my friend.
Oh, bet. I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, my moniker on here is Black Thinkers Podcast, but for the first time ever, I think I'm actually just introduce myself as Daoud Celestine. So that's my name, Daoud. It's an Arabic name, but I'm on here as Black Thinkers Podcast. My whole reason for starting that was, generally speaking, in my particular experience, Black people have not been viewed as people who think critically, right? It's always been, emotional and stuff like that. So I started this channel, right, as Black Thinkers Podcast, to kind of, combat against that. So, that's why I'm on here. I highlight news, I highlight history, I highlight, current events and whatever else, different social things, social commentary, if you will, just to combat the idea that we as a group, right, do not critically think about the social situations around us. And that's who I am now. Like everything I analyze it critically. I juxtapose it against, many different perspectives. And I just wanted to share that with everyone, online, and maybe grow some community, have some like-minded people to talk to, case in point, and, continue to struggle, as it were, but on a more thought-based, tangible, system that we could build instead of just, talking about stuff. But that's me. If I had to explain me in this forum, that is me, right? Critical thought, tangible results, actual actionable steps. That's me. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
No,
here I am.
Man. That was an introduction, my friend. I appreciate it. So we'll get right into it, man. As always, I kind of throw some of these questions out to you in advance, just to give you a heads up of where the conversation might go, or whatnot. So I wanted to just
Definitely.
for a baseline, establish what is critical thinking. Let's somebody coming from ground zero, never heard the term before. Like, what is critical thinking? And we'll take it from there.
All right. So on a more bare bones, level, critical thinking is essentially the ability to look at a situation, a problem, something, and analyze it based on the facts, right? You think about it and analyze an outcome based on the facts that are presented in the particular situation, right? That's as simple as anybody could put it, right? But as it pertains to more what I represent, right, socially, and what we are looking at socially, I would argue that it has more to do with, yes, the ability to think about the aspects of a situation and take the data and analyze it and then find an outcome, but more so the origins of the data. Like, we have to do that now, right? We have to critically think about where the information is coming from. We have to critically think about the person that's giving the information, because even that, the optics of it, like, there's so many different aspects to critical thought in a technological age, that the bare bones definition of it, or the bare bones concept of it, sometimes doesn't even cover it, because there's a lot of aspects to technology that we haven't even opened the door on yet. So I would like to argue that in this space, because we're on this forum, critical thought is indeed, what I said earlier, the bare bones, thinking critically based on facts, right? And to find a suitable outcome. But also it has to do a lot with, digestion of information, like how we digest it, where we digest it from, who we digest it from. You know what I mean? Especially in this forum. So to me, that's, from this perspective, that's what critical thought is.
No, actually, we're in the age of misinformation and alternative facts, right? Which,
Yeah,
how that's
exactly.
even a concept, but yeah, the highest ranking position in the country is using terms like alternative facts, right? So
Exactly.
we have a long road ahead of us, because
Yeah.
because of AI and the way imagery can be manipulated and the way voices can be manipulated. It's even more important to look at things very closely. I think about like
Absolutely.
this just the duck in the water, and it looks like all of a sudden the duck is like doing something that ducks don't do, and you look at the water, there's a little bit of fuzziness. It's like, oh wait a
Yeah,
minute, this is two videos superimposed on top of each other.
exactly.
But 10 years ago, if you looked at that, you would be like, oh shoot, this duck has
Yeah,
superpower.
that's a duck in the
Yeah,
So, this I didn't want to like give too much of a complicated answer, but I really thought about it as one of the things that, you like you said, you sent some of the things we're going to talk about beforehand. I really thought about it and I was like, critical thought I think has shifted to you can't even trust the fact that you're trying to critically think about. You have to critically think about the origin of that too, based on where we are. You have to critically think about the angle that the person giving you this information online, because it's not like you're in front of the person, right? It's not like you're talking to them, and you can use body language or reference points or immediately juxtapose something, or it's something you don't have the time. It's like you get something and in 30 seconds you have to analyze an entire video for authenticity, analyze the person for authenticity, Google fact check, in the like it's crazy, like to be able to do that, and even for people like us who have studied in the past, critical thinking at this point has become a game where it's like, is this going to be something that I already, is this going to be something that I already can weed out, right? Because it's like I've consumed X amount of books in my lifetime, and based on prior, in the 80s, maybe 70s, 60s, in your immediate circle, that was enough for you to kind of navigate. And then every time, the pace at which you were learning was kind of equal to the pace at which you were coming up against certain, concepts that you had to critically think about. Nowadays, the pace that you're learning, or the pace that you have to learn, it's impossible to outpace the amount of information that's actually coming in that you have to like juxtapose or critically think about when you see it, because it's
right.
like in a span of 1 hour on the internet, at 30-second intervals, you could have how many pieces of information thrown at you, and then for your mind to actually like analyze them, code them, put them in the correct spots. It's crazy, man. To me, like when I think about it, it's like, okay, I've consumed 10 books this week, but those 10 books don't even get me where I need to actually understand what this piece of information is. Like I have to read, 100 now. I have to read 200. I have to consume that many just as an example, obviously. But we know that we're human and we could think about these things. But as an example, as for the ratio of information coming in versus thought processes going out, like it's insane. It's
Yeah,
insane.
just as I'm listening to you, right? Because I think about critical thinking is not just one thing, right? It's
No.
a collection of skills. So if you think about critical thinking as the house, right? Um,
Yeah.
in the three pigs and the big bad wolf, right? The critical thinking would be the house that was built of bricks, right? The big bad wolf comes and he blows, and the house doesn't go down because you built it on foundation, you built it on facts, you built it on research, analysis, and inside of that house, there's different rooms. Like you got planning, you got forecast, you got inferences, you got research,
Excuse me.
you have deduction,
Yeah.
observation. You said books that you've read, things of those nature. But now it almost seems like a bazooka is aimed at the house. The big bad wolf now has a
Exactly.
bazooka. He has, infrared.
Yeah,
He
man.
can see through walls, and so now we're trying to figure out how to
Armor
rebuild this
piercing
house.
rounds, like it's
Yeah, right, right.
it's
And
crazy.
that's how things evolve. You build a castle, somebody builds a catapult. You know what I mean, and it's trying to
Right.
shoot boulders over the wall of the castle, and we continue to evolve that way. But at what point does with AI? At what point do we reach that nexus point where it's just you're outpaced? There's no way you can keep up. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very interesting thought. But I wanted to again keep baseline. Speaking specifically with the Black community, like what are some of the common biases and fallacies that you find in your discussions about issues in the Black diaspora? Like what are some of the faulty reasoning that you commonly run into when you're having these discussions?
I would say one big one is origin point. Are we African? Are we native peoples of the so-called Americas? Are we, even spiritually, what did we deem as so-called God? What did we, what position was the woman in? What position was the man in? Spiritually, what's feminine energy? What's masculine? So I would say that the origin point, right, of our culture, of ourselves, of our ness, right, is something that I think is something that is hard to talk about in our circles, especially because with the understanding of that, the different biases and fallacies too, in some cases, that come with the belief in whatever it is you think that origin point is, again, represented by spirituality, physical, origin, stuff like that. That has been a very difficult thing to suss out because I have attempted many times in conversation to find a common ground in understanding the origin point so that we can move. Okay, if you believe this, right? If you believe X, then we could talk about Y and Z, right? But even starting there has been a struggle because it's like, well, some people put too much emphasis on that origin point because we all understand the evolution of man, the evolution of human thought, the evolution of, how nature runs. But other people are so, what's the word I'm looking for? Traditionalist when it comes to those origins that they are unmoved. Like you cannot get them to, okay, well, how do we apply that to the modern time, right? As Black people, how do we apply your thought process to the way things are right now? You know what I mean? So I would argue that is one of the biggest things that I have had to kind of combat, especially now going deeper into, the study of nature, the meta nature, African spirituality, etc. It has been a struggle to kind of say like, okay, how do I apply these thought processes to now without losing the essence of what it means, right? Because that's another thing too. So did that answer your question or was that?
No, I think you hit it. As far as fundamentalism, right?
Yeah,
and,
there we
and
go.
literalism, where it's like, okay, this is exactly what it means. I always look at the Bible as my reference point because I come out of a Christian church, and it's like if you're literally interpreting the Bible, then your primary mandate, your interpretive motif is through that lens, right? Everything is to get you to heaven, right? And if it's not getting you to heaven, then it's secondary. And so when we talk about racism, for example, I remember a big turning point in my life was when I heard John MacArthur talk about racism, because I was really Reformed theology. I felt like I wasn't just a Christian. I was like on the edge of Christianity, where we were pushing forward. And I heard him talk about racism. He's like, well, I marched with Martin Luther King, but racism is always going to be a problem until we get Jesus, until you get the gospel. And he was like prescribing the gospel as a solution for racism,
right?
Which, through his lens, is
made sense.
Truth, you know what I mean? But practically is impotent.
Right?
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so what you're saying is racism ended in 1965. Or you're saying that racism, like sin, it's a sin problem. So now we've turned racism into something different that we can't. It's intangible now, and now we can't touch it. And so that's a problem we're not gonna. That's a problem we're not gonna touch in this lifetime. And so, but we have all these other problems that we can talk about. all these other problems we can talk about.
Just not that.
Just not that one, right? Racism is the only problem that we're going to solve by not talking about it.
Right, and then accepting Jesus. Don't talk about it, but accept Jesus, and then it'll fix itself.
But if you need a house built, you're going to go and get a blueprint, and you're going to build that house the way you need it to be built. But we can't do social systems that way.
No. And the funny thing, I'm glad you mentioned Christianity. I was not going to mention Christianity, but Sorry, the sun is still moving through the sky here, but I'm glad you mentioned it, because one of the fallacies in arguments against me or arguments against mine is always something to the effect of, well, Jesus, if we live by God's rule, like this, the problem is people are not obeying God's rule, and it's like, okay, but can you as a Christian explain to me not what you believe, but what the truth is? Right. Well, the truth is that the truth is what I believe. This is the answers that I get. So for me, when I try to apply that to these social situations, everything that the populace or the masses or the media or the powers that be, as they say, believe in when it comes to who we are as Black people, right? Yeah. We should just accept that. Because if your modus operandi is what I believe is truth, and then you apply that, you superimpose that in society, and you accept it, then everybody that believes what they believe and applies it to Black people, we should be able to accept them with that and have fellowship or whatever it is you call it. So when I used that example, and it was like, well, that's different because what they believe is not true. It goes against what God believes and this and that. I said, but you can't. I have lost the words to kind of, I guess, argue against that, because I don't want to argue belief systems. That's not what I want to do. Right. And when we're talking about, biases, belief systems for, those kinds of things, like origin points of spirituality, origin points of, who that person is, it always seems as though people are taking it more subjectively than I try to put it out. And it's an attack at that point. And I'm not trying, I don't think any of us try to attack each other's belief systems, but there has to be a point where we can do a one for one or a one for half, transition from what you believe and then how you live your life in this society. And if those two are constantly coming at odds with each other, then it's either your belief or the society, at which point you still have to make a change. You understand what I mean? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, so I don't know.
No, I'll follow up with that with an example, right? Mm-hmm. So, I was what I would call a radical Christian, more on the fundamentalist side of things. And but I was still, quote unquote, a Democrat, just because. Okay. But other than that, functionally conservative, as far as my core beliefs. Barack Obama became president. So I listen to Christian radio. That's all I listen to. You know what I mean? And I'm listening to every pastor like I'm in church. I'm like, and it would be a sermon, right? Full-fledged sermon, teary-eyed testimonies, every the law, you got the gospel, and then in the midst of that, Barack Obama would come up, and this would be the prophecy part of the sermon, and all of a sudden, Barack Obama is the abomination. Barack Obama is the Antichrist. And I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know how much he did much different than other presidents. But it's the unexamined racial bias in that pastor, that's shining through. And like you said in the beginning, just like, with technology, you're not going to be able to apply every single scripture in the Bible or every single scripture in whatever religious book you study all at once. You're not. No. Usually, it's not going to be possible, right? Because we're all imperfect beings. So you're going to selectively focus on key scriptures that are going to be the pillars of your particular faith, your particular walk. And the problem is, because of our unexamined bias, the scriptures that we choose to pick is based on that bias, not necessarily on God. So conservative, rich, conservative or middle class conservative, white, is going to say, well, the poor is always going to be with us. They're always going to be with us. That shouldn't be your focus. But someone who's not necessarily financially inclined is going to look at, oh, we should always Jesus breaking bread and giving to all
Right.
the thousand, all the different, acts of generosity he did. So even within one particular religion, that's why we have so many different denominations. But a critical thinker needs to be able to look at, even though it's difficult, look outside of your belief and examine even your own beliefs.
Correct.
Even figures in the Bible did that. They argued back
Yeah.
and forth with God, like, God, is this true? You really want me to do this?
People miss that. People
Yeah.
miss that part. They miss the part where the arguments have to happen. If your belief system cannot withstand, opposition, then maybe either you don't believe in it enough,
Yeah.
or it's not the right way to go. At which point, either way, you still have to make a change. You know what I mean? Like there has to be some kind of movement in you, your thought process. But yeah.
I was thinking about the middle ground fallacy. And the way, middle ground is basically like, okay, this, whatever it is, you got this extreme, then the right answer is we just meet in the middle, right? And that's the compromise that we make. But if it's a moral, morally reprehensible extreme, even if you meet that person halfway, it's still a moral reprehensible
right.
extreme. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So when you can't negotiate humanity. So like,
Yeah.
I looked at the 3/5 compromise. Slavery is wrong. And other people are like, no, these people are human. They need to be counted in the population. Based on how our House of Representatives works. No, these people are not human. They shouldn't be counted at all. Well, let's just count them as 3/5 of a human being. So you get to this impossibility, right? And something that's still moral reprehensible, but and that's the extreme. And I think just the very fact that if you have slavery free in the North and slavery abolished in the North and slavery still going strong in the South, it's like, it's wrong, but we're still going to let it go because we're going to make this compromise.
We need shirts to go to work. So.
Right. We're still making those types of compromises.
Yes.
We're still looking at, okay, this person is, practicing fascism. This person is endorsing genocide. Let's just meet them in the middle. Well, if you meet genocide in the middle, it's still genocide.
It's still. I was gonna. You said something earlier. Sorry, excuse me, but what did you say? We can't. It was something about human. I can't remember the phrasing you used, but I understood it. I understood what you meant. But
negotiating humanity.
Thank you. You can't negotiate humanity. But I would argue, right, from that unaddressed bias, right, of negotiating humanity that the country was built on. We have the birth of like many different systems that hold all of us, right, in these slavery situations. Okay, like we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about industrialism, we're talking about that's what we're talking about, because if it is difficult. It seems to me that it seems obvious, right? But when I talk to people and they say, how can people do these things? How can these things exist? How can they? I was like, well, did you think about the origin point? At what point did you think they were up here was different? Like the thought process was different. It was just, it's a different way to drive a car, but the concept is still tires with torque, moving a heavy object, a circle, rolling, used as a roller, like whatever, however you want to break that down to its bare bones physics concept, it is still force applied and motion. Like, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm trying to say? Like,
it's a continuous progression of the middle ground fallacy.
Correct.
So now
all the
got
time.
to the point where slavery is wrong and completely abolished.
Right.
For not just moral reasons, but also for political reasons.
Right.
So now we're going to just do sharecropping.
Right.
And we're going to do vagrancy laws. And all the slaves that just got free are now going to get arrested.
Exactly.
And get put right back on the planet.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Sharecropping is now okay. Let's do chain gangs.
Right.
Chain gangs don't work.
It's the same thing.
They're prisons.
The same thing.
Yeah. We'll make or take it all the way now. Let's make it impossible to keep your home financially, and then let's make it illegal to be homeless.
Facts.
No, and so just in that one fallacy, right? A whole host of different political maneuvering has been brought to light. But if you don't know, if you're not exercising those critical thinking skills, it'll go, right
Yep.
over your head.
Yep. Every time.
I wanted to talk about like how does a person develop critical thinking skills, and what are some of your favorite tools of reasoning to identify the root of an issue and speak truth to power?
Ooh. Okay. First, let's talk about developing critical thinking skills first.
Yeah.
That's difficult to tell someone to do. You know what I mean? Like do
Right.
A, X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? But I would say if you are given a piece of information, normally people can sense how it sits with them. It may not be this is true, this is false, right? But it may be an uneasiness, right, in you. Whether it's I need to know more about this, or nah, this don't sound right. There's some response that you ignore, you skip over, because maybe we're institutionalized in school to just skip over that and go read a book, which is important, but we skip over the natural response to certain things. So I would argue that we get more in tune with ourselves first, right? This is how we develop that critical thinking. This is the first step. Get in tune with yourself so you can understand the responses that you're having to the information, external stimuli that's coming in. You will be able to recognize what you yourself are feeling about that, right? That's step one. So center self, find self, understand self, right? As you're doing that, and some of these can be done, in tandem for some people, but like I said, step one, self. Step two, I like to think of it as, how they have those examples of the circles, like here's you, here's your inner circle, here's your outer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would argue that we address critical thinking development in that way, because we all know that whatever you're around is what you become. So
Right.
if you're after you're done with yourself, you need to consider who you are, attached to, what you're allowing in your energy, right? So what kind of information are you allowing in your energy? Is it a massive amount of opinionated, information? Is it a massive amount of, like, for example, are you doing, what's his name, Tucker Carlson versus, PBS or something like that? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of information are you, because we can apply this to every facet of our lives, but since we're talking about information and critical thought and data, like what kind of information are you allowing into your mind space, right? What kind of people are you having conversations with? What kind of books, what kind of history, what's your source, right? Start analyzing that. Like, start taking a look. Let me not use the word analyze, because it might turn some people off, but and then start looking at what is it that what do I know? How do I know that? Right? Because again, you're still in your own space, right? But you're going a little further out. Now you're not in your mind or your heart or your soul anymore. Now you're kind of like at your skin or your mouth or your eyes or your ears, right? That's where you are now. What's coming in? What kind of stuff am I reading? After that point, you will start to notice, right? At least that's what happened to me. You will start to notice that the questions start coming up on their own. Like, no one has to tell you or explain to you why something is a certain way or why you feel. No, you'll read something and go, why is that? You'll say it on your own. No one has to tell you to do that, right? So as far as, what to do to be a better critical thinker, you'll start to do that on your own, because after you've recognized yourself and after you've analyzed, or I guess, again, let me stop using that word, but after you've taken a look at the information, the type of information that you're digesting, you will begin to question the things that you are that's coming at you. And with those questions, the desire to find out or solve them is innate, because we all in one way, shape, or form are trying to, we all chase things as human beings. This is our nature, whether it's information and other human beings, tasking, whatever. This is what we do. We chase the control of our own situation. And that's the hook, line, and sinker, but that's another conversation. But those things will start to develop themselves on their own. And the same way we develop muscles, as we keep reading, as we keep listening, as we keep talking, as we keep writing, as we keep, these critical thinking skills will develop. And I would argue that writing, somewhere between step 2 and 3, is really important, because I think it helps you take what is up here and put it out. Outside of speaking to other people.
Yeah.
At the end of your day, pick one thing you saw as an exercise. Pick one thing you saw and just write it down. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to your son, your daughter, your coworker? This is the steps of analytics, right? Because you're asking these questions, from what perspective does this mean this? From what perspective does this mean that? Well, where did that come from? How did that happen? Why does this person think of it that way? And I think just with those first 3 simple steps, I think in some way, shape, or form, find a way to do it that works for you. But I truly believe that if you can honor self, understand self, take a look at the type of information that you're digesting, and then take a second to question the things that are coming in or the things that exist around you. That's the beginning to me. Like there's other levels that I have personally gone down, but in the beginning, that was all I had to do. And it was the impetus for, just lighting the fire to start to really dig into some of the social issues, the historic, how the history is written, and that led to one thing led to another, and here we are, right? So I would argue that, but honoring self and knowing self, definitely priority number 1.
No, I love that. What came to mind as you were going through that piece is emotional intelligence, right? Developing
Absolutely.
emotional intelligence, because the first cornerstone of that is self-awareness.
Yes.
Then also self-control. Right. So knowing yourself, but also being able to kind of observe yourself and then either do something that you don't want to do, or don't do something that you do want to do.
Yeah.
A lot of the messages that are out there are trying to prompt you into a certain behavior. A lot of times it's buying behavior, right?
Absolutely.
And then also, social awareness, right? So once you get aware of self, get aware of other people around you, what's going on
Correct.
in your environment. Then the other thing you said, which was really interesting, because I didn't make this connection, was mindfulness practices. Because when you were talking about like where it is, it's on your skin, it's in your heart, it's on your lips, like really doing a body scan of how you're reacting to messages, like that's amazing. I love that. But being present in your own body, because a lot of times the whole goal is to get you out of your body, to get you out of the moment. Either in a fear-based response because of what happened to you in the past, where you're dealing with your trauma, or a fear-based response based on what you think is going to happen, ahead, instead of being present in the moment and in your creativity. I think that's another important part of critical thinking is, being able to think outside of the box, outside of the things that are given to you, those options, and be able to come up with a creative solution to a problem.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's lovely. that's
well, let me say this real quick. I apologize, man. I'm in front of the window right now.
Yeah.
and the light, the sun keeps moving, the clouds move, because I can't go to my actual office right now because I got some work happening behind it, some renovations, and there's a lot of banging that you might hear. But that's why, I'm sorry about the lighting. If you're recording it, for use in something else, I apologize. But I just want to let you know, out of respect and courtesy, just that's what's going on.
Oh, it's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? And we will share this, at some point on YouTube, and also on TikTok, of course, in different portions. So we want to get the message out. Just looking at the comments real quick. Janetta said, "Keep shining, King." Thank you, appreciate it. magic wand. Today, middle ground is seen as the antithesis to the current polarity in our political culture. I can dig with that. Asa says they're often uninformed, following the preacher instead of truly learning for themselves. I think that's the important part. Like, you spend so many years in school and you're being just force fed information. You know what I mean? It's hand to mouth. You're being spoon fed this information. You have to basically regurgitate it for a test. But how often do you just explore a topic on your own that you're curious about? Like, we have these phones now, right? Google, you have Chat GPT. You could ask anything, literally anything, into these search engines and get an answer, at least a start, right? How often are we just locked into scrolling on social media versus actually learning tangible information that we can use?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
you know what's funny about that too? You mentioned ChatGPT, and I look at ChatGPT and their response socially as a marker, right? I use it as a social marker in my mind because we have reached a point where humans have, with new development of technology, humans have always done this thing, this playful thing, right? Because that's human nature. We with something new, a new shiny object, and we play with it, right? But I feel like in recent like maybe the last 2 or 3 generations, it has become more because of the fact that, in my mind, I think it's the war, the obsession with violence and war and like takeover and imperialism and stuff like that, socially in a general sense, right? I'm not the black community specifically, but just in a general sense, being on the Western Hemisphere. Every new thing, every new toy has just become an object of destruction or is being used as a tool of some kind of negative outcome. Like when ChatGPT came up, people in mass weren't like, you didn't hear stories of people using it to like research things in like a split second. And oh my gosh, this person found a paper from 1920 that somebody uploaded in 1982 or something like that. No, it was people are asking ChatGPT, how to make destructive things, and or what would happen if something destructive happened, and or what would happen if all the mistrust in the distrust in the government, all the racial bias, everything bled into ChatGPT and all the other AI mods that they created. And I use it as a social marker in my mind all the time because I think it's very telling where we're going as a society, because that's literally what they chose to use that for. I mean, come on, really?
Yeah.
You made a good point. Like Google, ChatGPT, all these things could be used to literally just either like blink my eye, depending on if you got them Google glasses or something, or just like type a couple things on a screen and you have a massive amount of information at your fingertips. And you want to find out how to build a dirty, or when's World War III happening? Or, I mean, come on, like, right. What are we talking about? Like, oh my God.
That's what did it say? The diameter of your knowledge is the circumference of your activity?
Yes, absolutely.
So if you come to in full with that thought process, you're just going to stay in the same circle you've been running in before you were exposed to that tool.
There you go.
But if you become a critical thinker,
exactly,
it's going to aid you in doing what you already do. So it's
exactly
very important. So with the Will to Change project, we have a specific focus on dismantling patriarchy, talking about masculinity and how to have better relationships and things of that nature, not just on a romantic basis, but just in general. Like, how do we relate to each other as human beings better? So I always ask this question: what is patriarchy in your own words, and is it related to the current issues in the Black community? If so, how? If not, how not?
In my own words, patriarchy is the imposition of white supremacy on on relationships between masculine and feminine energy. Do you understand what I mean? Like the imposition of supremacy onto the concept of masculine and feminine energy, like universally. You understand what I mean? And I'll circle back, but it does affect and have a play in the Black community negatively because of its relationship to, white supremacy, supremacist ideas and values, and the desire of the Black man to be in a more respected position within the community that was arguably lost in that time of history that we know about, right? So during slavery, Jim Crow, et cetera, even prior to that, in the Caribbean, et cetera. But I think that patriarchy, as we understand it and we see it colloquially, I do believe that it has very deep roots in this supremacist, like, I'm better than you, and here's why. Because of that, these are the things that I am entitled to. These are the things that you must do based on my entitlement. And these are the things you have to adhere to so that I maintain that superiority or that, the allowances that I get in society. Here's what you have to do. Right. And again, we know where that comes from. OK, because this was the impetus for the domination, the conquistadors, what have you, et cetera, throughout history. So I do think that is really closely related, if you understand what I mean.
No, it is a dominator model superimposed on gender.
Correct.
It's a system of male domination and women either coping or adhering or submitting to that dominating model.
Correct.
And I would say, like, with regards to the Black community specifically, right? Mm-hmm. We're in a situation where, specifically with Black America, right? We dealt with chattel slavery, mm-hmm. where humanity, not just masculinity, was attempted to be stripped from us, right? Mm-hmm. That's what chattel slavery is. Mm-hmm. So in that generational transition, a lot of the customs and some of them were preserved. Mm-hmm. Thank God. But, at the same time, a lot of the mentality was broken down. So now when you look at trying to attain manhood, trying to attain manhood in a Western society, you are in the process of trying to do that, adhering to those standards of manhood that are upheld by white supremacy.
Correct.
Right? So that you're buying into that value system by virtue of trying to gain that respect or mm-hmm. that stature or whatnot. And in some cases, in many cases, you're doing that at the expense of Black women.
Yes.
Because in order to be that man in that society, you have to be a dominator.
Yes.
You have to be a conquistador or conqueror or whatnot. And so because that's your value system now, that's the first person you conquer.
And another aspect of it too. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I posted something about Joshua Mapunga a while ago, like last year at some point, early on last year, where he was interviewed and he was asked about that, and he was basically, the question was, about femininity and feminism and et cetera, and how it's playing out in the social structure in South Africa. And he was saying that a lot of people got upset, but he said that the problem he sees is that women, instead of getting into these positions, let's say in corporate, in the corporate world, and making changes based on what they know other women need, they will buy into the patriarchal concepts and ideas because arguably they had to get there. Mm-hmm. And then they will turn around and act out on the same women that they were years ago, right? And it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anything. So he was kind of shifting I took it as him shifting responsibility to men to change the sphere with which women are, having to come up in these corporate, environments and corporate circles. And if we call it a man's world, if we call it a patriarchy, yes, then we have the power to change that. And if it's not being changed, then it's not like women's fault. Like they didn't do enough, they didn't march enough, or they didn't argue. No, it's because we did not want to change it as men, as a group. We did not want to address that. So I like his example, just to add on to what you said, because women now, more so than before, are calling themselves, activists, but they're actually buying into the patriarchy to win, and then thinking that when they win, that they'll be able to turn around and help somebody. Like that's not usually how it goes, because to win, you have to surrender certain things that you need to actually help the people that are coming up. And once you get there, you can't do that. So I think as men, I think you're absolutely right. We need to. Anyway, I wanted to add that to what you said, because I think it's interesting that occurs now, and we have been privy to, or have created, or stood by and watched as the creation of this type of society, such that a woman would have to do that and have to come up in that kind of environment. You know what I mean? Just to be successful, right? Just to be something, So.
No, and this is exactly why I say a single mother does not a matriarchy make. Just because you're a lot of things because there's not a man there, but even if there is a man there, just because you're a woman in charge, so to speak, does not make that a matriarchy. Because a matriarchy or a patriarchy, first and foremost, is a mindset. It's
correct.
A way to organize power, resources, time, money, energy. However you put it. And so a patriarchal structure is a top-down structure. It is a vertical hierarchy with very few people at the top, because that's where wealth, power, decision making, all that is consolidated by design. Because that same patriarchal structure is also the white supremacist structure, is also the imperialist structure, is also the capitalist structure, so on and so forth. So if you as a woman get to the top of that structure, that doesn't make it a matriarchy. That just means that you're a woman in power in a patriarchy.
Inside of right, exactly.
Yeah. Same for the same style of tokenism that we receive.
Correct.
When we see a black male entertainer who makes $1 billion, in a record industry that's still controlled by
Yep.
It did not certainly make that a black power structure.
No,
it just means that one person, through tokenism or through their own efforts or whatnot, or their luck, got that position and adopted a lot of that mentality to do so.
Absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. We're on the same page with that. So do you think oppressive social constructs such as racism, sexism, ableism, etc., work to dull or nullify collective critical thinking? And if so, how?
Okay, I think they do. And I think the way that they do nullify critical thinking is all the isms, the things that isms do, from my perspective, is that they provide some predisposed script with which your brain has to progress through information that it receives. You understand what I mean? Like, it's like a piece of paper. You're given a piece of paper when you subscribe to a certain ism. You're given a piece of paper, or Ianity, I guess. You're given a piece of paper or a little card where it's like, if this happens, then you have to say this or think this. And then that will push you to this brain path. This brain path will push you to that one, and so on and so forth, until you arrive at the same destination every time. Now, subscribing to these things, these ologies and these isms, it dulls the critical thinking, because you cannot then create new brain paths with which to think of different perspectives and or information that you receive, because you keep going the same way, right? You're in this echo chamber of a mind where everything that you intake, the filter is this card that you were given once you subscribed yourself to that thing, and you attach yourself to you attach your beliefs rather to that, instead of just believing things based on your responses to them and or your response based on the information that you just developed the knowledge, sorry, that you just developed. Instead of living that way, we are handed this, in essence, minute and 30-second card, right? Because that's how we consume information now as a society, right? A minute and 30 seconds, and then we swipe. So we're given that card, and it's like, yep, I believe in that. Swipe, I believe in that. Swipe, and then all these cards are getting downloaded, and these things are being put as bowling alley, the things on the side when you're a kid and you can't, the railings or whatever, like guardrails. They're like these guardrails. These mental guardrails or training wheels where it's like, yep, go left here, go right here, do this, and then you'll arrive at your destination. Laziness, right? We don't want to do the work that's necessary to actually travel down these roads on our own and figure out what it is that we need to do, and then learn those lessons, sometimes the hard ones, where it's like, I went down the wrong way, I got to double back. Right. So all of these things, these isms, these analogies, I mean, I was reading these isms and these ologies, they dull critical thinking because of that. It's just a pre-prescribed, brain pathway. And you can't learn from that. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
No, that's I love that. And I love the definition of insanity. Is very apt in that. Just to go on top of that, I think it's a collective set of lies.
Correct.
And assumptions, right? Racism in the form that we deal with it now came after colonization. First they said, okay, well, we're going to justify what we're about to do, right? Because we know we're going to have cognitive dissonance. So, doctrine of discovery, anyone that doesn't believe what we believe is not quite human. So go do what you do. Go conquer. You can do whatever you want to them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then to solidify that initial acquisition, we're going to create this hierarchy where these people are at top, these people are in the middle, these people are at the bottom, and we're going to teach these people at the bottom why they're at the bottom. And justify why they're at the bottom. Maybe they're cursed. Maybe it's a sin that they created. Whatever it is. It's virtuous to be poor. Whatever that is. And that way they'll begin to replicate that afterwards, and we don't have to do as much work, as you said, laziness. And same thing. So racism, same thing with sexism. We're gonna at some point, men decided, we're not this equal thing. We're just gonna go ahead and conquer them. You know what I mean? And then we're gonna come up with some ideas that we're going to teach to our daughters and we're going to teach to our sons, so they'll replicate that and just assume the positions that we prescribe.
You'll never get a man if you don't do this. You'll never get a man if you don't do that. How are you going to get a husband if you can't? Yeah.
Same
as if this person's whole
ableism, like we assume it's easier for us, right? To assume a certain subset of stereotypes about someone who might be visually impaired or hearing impaired, so that we don't have to shape our world to accommodate them, right? And that's pretty much what it comes down to. We're gonna base, and that's because of that we're now taking generalities, stereotypes, generalizations, and we're going to force it to apply to very specific situations.
Absolutely.
So that we don't have to see you as human.
Absolutely.
So if I can dehumanize you, then I can take advantage of you, exploit you, even unalive you, and still have a clean conscience. Because I like to
exactly. Makes it easier to enact all these injustices on you because you're not really you. You're a thing. You're a thing. Right. You're an inanimate object. So whatever.
That's fun. I remember MLK was saying something about the thingification of the Negro.
Yeah, of the Negro. Yeah.
That's,
people forget that part about him too. They always focus on the march and the speech, but they don't remember that the reason why he was even chosen to be a martyr in the first place was because he was starting to say some stuff they didn't like. But anyway,
no, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about like your personal journey and how you came to be a critical thinker? I know you talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but like what led you to, you talked about this some in the beginning, like what led you to start the Black Thinkers podcast. But can you talk a little bit about your personal journey and what got you to this point?
I would like to start at my deconstruction of Christianity, right? Pentecostal Christian, but I guess the confusion was laid early. And I promise this goes into my critical thinking. Just bear with me, but the confusion was seeded early because my father kind of raised me in the Muslim faith, right, the Nation of Islam, and my mother transitioned into Christianity, kind of the way Farrakhan, goes back and forth, right? But she transitioned into Christianity, and it was like Pentecostal Christian. So as a young child, my dad's working, on Sunday because he couldn't be off, and my mother took us to church. So I was doing that. Some things started happening in church that confused me, and I started to question, like, you say God is XYZ, for you, to you, for us, and yet this is what you're allowed to do. So that brought up a lot of questions. I started questioning the people in my circles, which didn't go over nicely. But that was the impetus for my critical thinking, is like the deconstruction of Christianity, because it didn't make sense to me. But I was young, I was 16, 17. I didn't know what questions to ask. I was asking based on emotions, right? I was asking based on, this doesn't feel like it makes sense. This doesn't feel like it's right. So I would say it was still in its infancy, because I came up through the school system like everybody else. So my critical thinking skills were not, it wasn't enough at that point. I didn't have enough to actually understand, because that knowledge of self that I would have gotten in a more indigenous environment, from up until the age of 7 or 8, that would have allowed me to understand what these feelings were. I didn't have that baseline, right? So, but anyway, 16, 17, that happened. Fast forward a little bit, I ended up homeless in Brooklyn for about 2 years. That, I would argue, was another milestone for my critical thought, because when you're kind of on the outskirts of society, and I know you understand what I mean by that, you're other. When you're homeless, when you're disabled, whatever, you're other. Not to mention you black, but you're other now. You're able to see kind of what you're able to see what how society actually behaves when they don't think that anyone is giving them, like, when they don't, I hate to say when they don't think anyone's looking, but that's what I mean. Yeah. When they don't think other people are, clapping their hands for them, or there's no camera or whatever, the things that they do, man. And the things that they do when they don't think anybody's around. And if they consider you a non-entity, like an other, when you're around, it's almost like you're not there. So you can kind of sneak up on them being them, if you understand what I mean. And the stuff that I saw was like, what? Like, this is really what society is? And it made me like, what am I doing? Like, who am I in relation to this? Right? That was really the first question. Like, who or what am I in relation to this that I'm looking at, that I'm witnessing? Fast forward a little bit more, I ended up in the Navy because I really like street life. Nah, two winters in New York, bro. That'll set you right if you really don't know what you're doing in life. But I ended up in the Navy, ended up on submarines, and then that was another milestone, because the military-industrial complex, as it relates to service members, is interesting. Like, I really wanted to develop a series on this because I think it's very, 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 very interesting what service members think about that side, like their side of the line when it comes to the military-industrial complex. But that was another juxtaposition I had to make, because what we were dealing with inside our little ecosphere was the same as society, and I often would superimpose it to kind of analyze things that I would hear in the past. I'd be like, okay, this happened with these 4 people, while we were out at sea. What did that really mean? Like, where did that come from? Where did this guy come up with the idea to say that particular thing to me? Because I never heard him say that to somebody else. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Yeah. And that kind of made it kind of grew it a little more. Fast forward to the end of my time in the military, probably like the last 3 years, I started to really consume more books, right? And I started with the obvious ones, the James Baldwins, you know, the like J. Rap Brown speeches and, you know, Marcus Garvey and like, you know, just back and forth. You know, is this the way I want to go? Is it a Pan-African way? Is it the, you know, colloquially African-American way? Is it the African way? Is it the, you know, what about other indigenous peoples everywhere else? Because then I had my origin point, which I had to juxtapose again, which was that my parents were Caribbean. I was first generation American. So that was a whole nother thing happening in my head, because a lot of the ways that I looked at life were based on their values, and their values don't always match, like Caribbean values do not match American values. So that was a whole nother level of critical thinking that I had to embark on and dissect, because I had to understand what part of that was Caribbean. And then later on, which is where you caught me here, I was at the point where understanding that Caribbean values are largely imperialistic and imperialistically European, Western European, because of the colonialism. So there's a lot of instilled things that the lens is clearly like English for as it relates to Trinidad. It's clearly English. That's not from you. That's not from Africa. That's not from any of the indigenous people, the Arawaks in the area. That's a European thing. So, you know, it's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. But definitely started with the dissection, or the deconstruction rather, of the Christian church and Islam. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your.
No.
I feel like I'm giving you these dissertations, man, because my brain. I'm sorry, man. That's how my brain is working. Like like a spider web. But yeah.
It's a lot of layers to pull back. You know what I mean? I think, you know, you start to seek out what are considered virtues, right?
Yeah.
And then some of those virtues are eternal. You know, there are virtues always going to be virtues, but some of those virtues are imperialistic virtues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're what I think about it. Okay, Rudyard Kipling wrote the poem "If." When I graduated high school, my grandmother gave me a card, biggest card I got, had the entire poem of "If" and $100 bill in it. And I was like, oh, wow, I got $100, first of all, a $100 bill. Big thing when I graduated. And the poem was talking about, you know, what it means to be a man. But the same author that wrote the poem "If" wrote the poem "White Man's Burden."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, which was an appeal not only to white supremacy, but also to imperialism and to you know, kind of the warmongering that was going on.
Exactly.
So it's like, how do these two things come out of the same person's brain? So in me pushing towards "If," I'm also pushing towards the ideology that supported a white man's burden.
Right.
And so,
the duality of that existence is rough sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was, you know, coming out of, you know, single parent home and trying to come out of our economic conditions to get, you know, better life. I was going to school to be an engineer, and then getting an awakening through hip hop. You know, was my first awakening. You know, I listened to Ras Kass, "Nature of the Threat." It's like one of those moments I just kind of stand up. It's like, wow, what is this? Yeah, you know, and I just got into a lot of different music and the messages that were coming out at the time. And then moving from that awakening and then thinking, oh, you know, it's the real key is Jesus, right? You know, this, you know, religion and God. This is why the world is the way it is. And so you go into a totally different motif and explanation only to find out there's another level to it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I got to the point where I am now from deconstructing from Christianity really due to what it did to my marriage. You know what I mean? I was so engrossed in, you know, empowering, if not preaching the gospel, empowering the gospel to be preached through service and through, you know, various, you know, mediums, music, and like this thing, that I neglected some of the most integral parts of me, right? And so that deconstructing Christianity led me to both decolonization, dismantling patriarchy and looking at some of my homophobia, like things that were baked into it. It was like, wow.
Yeah.
And it all kind of comes from that same indoctrination. Mm-hmm. So I always love hearing personal stories and how you evolve, because that gives a blueprint for other people to say, oh, wow, if he can do it, I can do it as well. Because
absolutely.
I was where he is where I am now is where he used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, man. Like I was in the choir. I played keys. I played drums. I played guitar. Like I was there every day of the week, man. And then just look at where I'm at now. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a long road sometimes, but the road not traveled, right? So you got to go. You got to go down that road, figure it out, find yourself. And I'm still looking, right? A lot of people believe in the fallacy that when you find self, there's like this, the skies will part, and then, you'll never have to do it again. And then, you just know who you are forever. No, it's a fluid thing, right? Growth occurs as it was just said in the comments. Growth occurs all the time, every day, every second, right? Your cells are multiplying. Everything is changing by every second. So for you to think that Monday the skies parted and you found out who you were, and then Tuesday you don't think you had to revisit that or juxtapose that against something that you just found out today, then you're actually not doing it for real. You know what I mean? Like, because that happens all the time. Even and don't have children, because that'll happen multiple times a day. Like
your entire reality.
It's like, wait, but for the last 30 years, for the last 40 years, for the last 50 years. Oh yeah, man. And that child will mess that up. So, I just wanted to add that. Like, come on, like that. It's finding.
Honestly, that's the beauty of growing older. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Being able to continually mature and evolve as a person. You know what I mean? I think we rob ourselves of something very precious when we think that, 20 is my peak. 25 is my peak. Oh, if I don't reach my goal, if I don't achieve my dream by the time I'm 30, my life is over. And it's a continuous. Again, it's almost a paralysis too. That's why I feel like a lot of teenagers suffer with depression, because it's all this pressure. Like, you have to decide everything you're going to do in life by the time you graduate high school, or else you're going to be a loser, right? Yep. And if you don't follow this exact timeline, you're going to be a loser. And it's all these additional. When once you get out there, it's like, well, wait a minute. Who is determining this?
Right. Thank you.
Who is following me around? With these labels.
Right. Like, it's ridiculous.
And a lot of times it's us doing it to each other. You know what I mean?
It's self-imposed, man. Self-imposed.
It's our friend group. But it's like we're going all through the same thing.
Yeah.
We don't learn how to accept ourselves for who we are.
Yeah.
And so much time trying to be somebody else.
Yeah.
You wake up when you are older and you didn't do that work. And now you're 40, you're 50, trying to figure out where all the time went. Well, you spent all the time being somebody else.
Exactly.
Instead of learning who you are.
Exactly. Like, just real quick, but my first son, right? I had to learn that in a real way. I had read it. I had understood it mentally, logically. It made sense. But the concept of not imposing what society believes your child is, or who you are, whatever, on that child as they're developing themselves. It didn't become a very real thing until I was watching my son do it. And now I had to go turn around, double back, when he was like 2 or 3. Well, he didn't know what he was doing, but I could tell. I was like, I know what this means. At 2, it's cute, or it's funny, or it's like, he'll be all right, he'll figure it out. But at 20, at 16, that right there is that's a clear indicator to me that I have failed you. You understand? So right. I had to take a turn, and in doing so, we were able to. But the basic concept was, hey, from the ages of 1, 0, essentially, birth to 7, 8, 9, this child has to develop itself, him or herself, sorry, based on its environment, him or her environment. You are there. Your wife is there. Your mother, your grandmother, whatever, family, whoever. What happens to children usually by the age of 5 or 6? They end up institutionalized in school. Prior to that, everyone's trying to gain the edge to get their child into these special programs and all of this stuff. So even before they're there, they're like pushing on them their math and the science and the writing and the reading and the. Whereas in a generally like indigenous environment, it was, hey, go play in the dirt. And when you yourself naturally question me as to what this dirt is, I will teach you what the dirt is. When you yourself naturally stack these stones like this, I will tell you, look, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you yourself, you understand what I mean? It's a more natural way of introducing the information rather than sit down and preparing them for this institutionalization where you got a rule in your hand and you're like 1, 2, 3. Like I have just taught you the same thing, but it was not detrimental to your personal growth, right? If we did it outside or as if we were rolling around on the couch or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I looked up at the fan blade and I said 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's significantly different and it's more effective, I would argue, because now you have happy memories attached to these lessons. But, I had to learn that because I came from a very, again, Western European, English, put your uniform on and walk to school type situation where the teacher, cause I came from that because my parents were raised like that. So it was like, if you're not reading by 2, then you're gonna fail. If you're not doing math, if you're not doing higher math by 4, this is gonna happen to you. If by 7 you're not able to, so it was like I had to really break myself out of that first, and then like kind of retrain my son's mind to accept, look, man, this is where you're at, and that's okay. That's okay, brother. Like, I'm here with you. I'll teach you. But I don't know. I felt like that was on my heart to put out because that thing for me, raising these 2 boys has been the most, I have learned the most of myself raising these 2 children.
That's beautiful, man. My salute to you. First of all, thank you for your service, man. But thank you also, just as an example of fatherhood, man. That's beautiful.
Oh, man.
We need that.
It's the most important thing to me.
It absolutely is. So I guess, I don't know if we can call this a game, but I just found this, just in looking around, I found this list of the top 5 issues facing the Black community.
Oh, and, bet.
At first I felt it was comical, but then I really wanted to look at it. So this is an abbreviated version of a list. It's older. It came out like 2016, I think. Okay. Review on the top 5. So I'm gonna list the first from in reverse order, going from 5 to 1, and I just want to get your thoughts on, first of all, evaluating this claim, right? So
sure.
So the number 5, the fifth top issue facing the Black community is the victim mentality, right? The victim mentality being that Black people are so associated with these things that happened in the distant past, that they're locked into it and they're waiting for handouts, waiting for whether it be reparations or some other form of exterior justice, rather than pulling themselves up their bootstraps and accomplishing things through hard work. So the victim mentality is one of the things facing the Black community. What would your thoughts be, or how would you evaluate that claim?
You're gonna don't hit me. I think it's true, but not in the way that people think, right? Gotcha. I think the victim mentality is one of the bigger problems. I wouldn't say number 5, but it is one of the bigger problems in the Black community because of the success from its leveraging. We know what media is, we know what entertainment is, we know what music, art, everything. Leveraging that has been successful, has been a mark of success for a lot of people, Black, white, whoever, mostly white, because we're living in a supremacist, society where, white values are running rampant and they rule. But that aside, it has still been a point of success for even black people, right? I don't know who's going to be upset with me, but I do not like that Tyler Perry has gotten success for what he has done. I don't.
Touche.
I don't. Like,
Touche.
it bothers me. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're only highlighting, you already know. The fact that you answered that way, I know you understand. So we're not even going to dig too much into that aspect of it, or him, sorry. But yes, that aspect of the victim mentality being a mark of success is, I think, something that holds people back, because even when you're in a position where you don't need to do that, you still find it necessary to say things like, you know, or maybe it's because I'm black. I don't know, but it's like, is it or is it not? It could be. We live in a place where it could be. That is a fact. But the fact that you are dancing around this thing, right, is like, are you about to leverage that? Are you about to leverage that for something that you think will be a benefit to you, right, at the detriment to maybe people around you? And yeah, maybe this person's right, and maybe that's something that they grew up with, but do you know that for a fact? Are you just leveraging it? So that, I think, is a hard conversation that I think we as a community need to have with ourselves. You know, when are we leveraging this thing either for success or for the benefit of you know, ourselves in a certain situation where it's like, you know, I could have done this, but he's still racist anyway, so I'm gonna just say it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Come on, bro. Like, have some responsibility, right? And on the flip, right? This again, everything has multiple perspectives. On the flip side, it's a detriment because not our community, from our community's perspective, but from externally, right? When you actually bring up a good historical point or a reference, or you're in the middle of a conversation, it is not the job of black people to convince white people of anything. However, these conversations happen in social settings. And when you bring these things up, the colloquial concept of victim mentality, that phrase, right? That buzz phrase, as they say, it impedes the ability of anyone to really have a conversation, whether you're a black conservative or, you know, someone who believes in black empowerment, because there's a lot of people on that side too who is like, nah, you're just being a victim. You know, but no, if you think I'm being a victim and you think that I should get out of that and just do right for myself, being a victim would have to still constitute there being something to be a victim of. Right. So can we look at what I'm saying I'm a victim of first and analyze to see if that's really victimizing me first? Can we do that first? Because your number one step shouldn't be to be like you're being a victim. Stop that. Right. Maybe for me, as I'm looking internally and I'm trying to fix myself, I should say, am I being a victim? Sure. But for me, when we're having a conversation or we are all trying to critically think about what the solution is, the first step shouldn't be you're being a victim, fix that. That's a personal thing. Right. The first step should be, what is it that you are saying is victimizing you? You understand? So there's two ways that I take that buzz phrase. And the first way I agree because of Tyler Perry, and the second way I disagree because it's a detriment only to the people who want to use it to diminish any arguments that we have or any position that we take socially.
Nah, you know what? I get no hate from me, my friend. I feel like those two things can be true at the same time.
I agree.
What we're talking about two different types of responsibility. We're talking about individual responsibility, which is my responsibility to myself, by the way. And we're talking about social responsibility, right? Our responsibility to have each other. Now, the way and this is something I learned actually on TikTok, you know, because of all these different conversations going on at once. So the way I think about this is to try and help me conceptualize it from a outside perspective. I look at it from a actual grape victim, right? Talking about, you know, a woman grape victim. So a woman's safety conversation is primarily women having that conversation amongst women. Right. What will make us safe? What am I doing, or what am I doing to put myself at risk? Right. That's one conversation over here. But I, as a man, participating in patriarchy, which is a system that creates the atmosphere for these things to happen, even if I'm not doing it myself.
There we go.
It's not for me to then say, "Oh, you're being a victim." You have a victim mentality.
Exactly.
You need to get over that
Exactly.
trauma. Why are you still talking about this 20 years later? Why are you still talking about
Exactly.
this 30 years later?
Exactly.
Because it's a hypocritical. It's gaslighting, is what it is.
Yes.
It's gaslighting,
Absolutely.
right? And then specifically with the racial conversation, what often accompanies it is that this distant past type thing. Oh, this
Right.
happened a
Like it
long
was
time ago.
so
Your
far
ancestors.
away, like
No,
so far.
this is still happening now, right? This
Yeah.
is again that middle ground fallacy where we've just called it something different, we've camouflaged it, we've painted it with different colors, but the same outcome is still happening, right? There's still the slavery still exists.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? In just different ways.
Yep.
Through sex trafficking, through the prison industrial complex, through wage poverty. So all of those things still take place. It's just under different guise. Maybe somebody's paying the bill different, but it still takes place, and often for the same reason. So you on the outside looking in as a beneficiary of this particular system of oppression cannot then tell me I'm a victim, or I have a
Right.
victim mentality. But I myself, as a person who's dealing with this oppression, who is a survivor of it, right? It's always incumbent on me to, whatever the circumstances is, find a way to adapt and overcome, for my own survival and those of my posterity. But two different conversations happening at once, and the Tyler Perry conversation is because what that is, and it's not just him. I don't want to.
No. Yeah.
When we look at the beneficiaries of racism,
Yep.
sometimes those are black people too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I think the focus is sometimes put on them. That's what the whole goal of tokenism is, to have those scapegoats to take place.
Yeah.
Because there wouldn't be a Tyler Perry if there wasn't those circumstances to relate to everyone about.
Exactly.
And if there wasn't just such a slanted, entertainment industry where only a few of our voices get through. But at the same time, you definitely do profit off of black trauma.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm at a surplus. I'm a super saturation point of black trauma. All the different slave films that came out like year after year after year, like, no, I can't go see them anymore.
No.
We need something different.
Yeah.
I need to see black people happy. I need to see
Yeah.
black people not in the bourgeoisie,
Nope.
stereotypical form of success, but just enjoying life in different varieties. I need to see that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I need to see a regular movie about a black person doing something, like black people doing things.
Right. Just black peopling and being left
And
alone.
just be, yeah.
Great movie. Great movie.
That's it. Great movie. That was an excellent film.
Right.
Like,
I love the way the black people were black peopling.
yeah, just being left alone and,
Right, being
but
left alone.
just mind their own business. Like, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so number 4. All right. The lack of diversity with, again, top 5 problems with the black community. The lack of diversity within the black community, or groupthink, specifically in the unspoken part, is the conservative voice within the black community. But just in general, the lack of diversity within the black community, or groupthink. One argument was, how can you ask for diversity amongst other groups of people when you don't have diversity within your people group?
Right. This was difficult because, for me personally, because from a social perspective, I agree with, not a social. What's the best way to say it? From a legal and more like lawful, how to deal with their structure. I believe more in a lack of diversity. But when it comes to critically thinking and or inclusion in just life, you know what I mean? Like, lack of diversity is like a cobra. It's like giving a hug to the proverbial neck of the community with your bare hands. Like, if you don't have diversity in there, how can you have change or growth, or, you know what I mean? But on a legal, you know what I mean, like a state's level, lack of diversity, I think, will benefit for some aspects of our group success, our group's success. But as far as, I'm glad you made the delineation for groupthink. Okay, so along that lines, right, we're talking about the second way that I said, like lack of diversity on the social, cultural level of critical thought as it pertains to the way society is impacting the group, right? And you mentioned conservatives, and honestly, I don't understand how someone can be a political conservative and be black. I don't understand that. Like, I understand you have conservative values, right? There's a difference between the conservative values and colloquially political conservatism. Like, that right there to me is a hard line. Like, you can't do, because this is everything that you believe in, the way in which it was manifested in society is against you. So how could you possibly say that this is okay? It doesn't benefit you at all. But within the black community itself, I think that groupthink does exist, but not in the way of, let's all vote Democrat. I think that that's just an emotional response to historical stimuli, right? That whole Democrat thing. And I do believe that people are more so than before in previous eras coming out of that. So I'm not even gonna spend time on that. But as far as it relates to like being a group and not being a monolith and all that, listen, we need to stop assuming, I would argue, that black people are doing, because we have a thing that we do. Black people are not gonna like that. Black people are not gonna accept that.
Right.
You think a black person would do? I don't like that, because to me that is groupthink. If we are all collectively saying that and imposing those types of stereotypes onto ourselves, how can we then grow out of it? So I think the lack of diversity of thought is something that is killing us. And I would probably shift that up one, at least, lack of diversity of thought, because that type of groupthink where we self-impose these stereotypes and we patronize the Tyler Perrys, and we even when we all argue against the two tokens that are hanging out with the conservatives, I think that all of those actions socially and just like as a group, I think is detrimental, because again, it comes with a pre-prescribed card that we all now have to say, this is what we think about Candace Owens, and this is what we think about. We can all mean the same thing about Candace Owens, but we all need to be able to say it and explain it and express it differently, because if we are all saying the same thing, then we're just a bunch of copies of each other, and there's no way for us to actually grow. But if I say, I don't like the way Candace does this, but she did make a good point about this particular thing that I think we need to talk about, she don't need to be talking about that, because she don't understand the nuance of that or how it affects us now. But we need to have this conversation right now. And then you turn around and say, nah, if you say anything that Candace said was right, then you wrong too. It's like, no, but did you hear me, my brother? Did you hear me, my sister? I don't agree with Candace, but this particular aspect of her conversation, we cannot allow it to be true. You know what I mean? So there's certain things like that, even analyzing conservative tokens, that I think we need to do away with too, as far as groupthink is concerned. And then the self-imposition of stereotypes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Tyler Perry, blah, blah, blah. Those things are stifling, both of those things.
Now, in a way, it's the ad hominem fallacy.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
not going to listen to what you said because of who I see you as being. Right?
There you go.
Who you're represented in the media, right? So
there you go.
It's impossible for you to have a point because of that.
Because of that.
But at the same time, just because you have a point doesn't mean that you're necessarily out for my best interest.
Correct.
So I can take the facts of what you're saying, use it for my own purposes, but still know that you're a snake in the grass.
Yeah, of course.
Based on previous performance.
Yeah. I think, you know what?
I really appreciate that.
I'm glad you said that, though, because my last iteration of TikTok, I had a lot of problems with that. I had a lot of problems with the baby in the bathwater for lack of a
Right.
better term. Because I'm like, God, can we not have a conversation about this? This is not about the person saying it. Like, I understand we're all consuming content and this and that, but this particular thing, that this sentence is attached to a social fallacy and or bias that we have to have a conversation about. Why are we still talking about the person that said it in the comments and the DMs and the lives? Like, come on, man. Like, I only picked it because, you know, it's the same thing that you want me to put a different. Okay, I'll find a different person that says it, and I'll put it. Yeah,
in vogue at that moment. Like,
yeah, and I'm like,
Bill Hooks said in 1992. This is looking like this is a 60-second clip, bro. I just like the clip.
bro, I'm trying. Like, like what you want. But anyway, I'm glad you said that, bro. Because I thought it was crazy. I really thought it was crazy. I was like, I don't know. I thought it was crazy for expecting people to, or thinking that people would more accept the concept and be willing to talk about the context of the conversation rather than the person that has started the conversation. You know what I mean? Like, the person is irrelevant at this point. I mean, we got too many people talking. Just figure out the concepts and let's talk about it.
No, that's a very good point. Very good point. I want to because I'll get sidetracked. So, all right. So number 3. Now, hold on. Let me look at the comments real quick. Oakland BMX rider said, "Our mental is in a box. Clones. We doing what they doing, right?
Yeah.
So we're buying into our own stereotypes.
Exactly.
Yep. Absolutely." Christina, how are you? Asa says, "Stop consuming negative, unhealthy things that are an affront to our mind and our spirit." I think that's very important. You got to look. Just like you have a physical diet, you have to have a mental diet as well.
Facts.
Because the programs are intentionally created to put us at low or lowered vibrations. We have to stop consuming negative thoughts. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Good stuff. Okay. So then, all right. So number 3, urban terrorism. Right. So this is the black on black argument. Basically, how they look at how many people were lynched officially, between the end of Reconstruction to the end of Jim Crow, and it's like 3,000 some odd people, 4,000 some odd people, and they compare that to the yearly figures of quote unquote black people unaliving other black people.
Right.
So how can you be upset about one thing when you're not? How can you be upset about police brutality when this is happening every day in your own communities?
Yeah. Again, I refuse to pay homage to that on a social level, on a societal level. Sorry, because we all know what that's used for, right? We all know what that rebuttal is used to do. To any arguments that we bring up with social justice, police brutality, etc. Right. But I will say this: we do need to take a turn as a group internally and start paying attention to the fact that there was a time where it's like, we don't do that here. Go across the tracks and do it. I'm not saying to do it is a good thing, right? But I'm saying whatever you doing that you know is detrimental, you ain't gonna do it to the dude that you seeing every day at the corner store. You understand? You ain't gonna do it to the mom on the stoop that you used to walk by when you went to school. Like, there was a certain code, a certain honor to that. Don't do it at all, is what I think. But if you're going to do these things, you should have at least enough sense of self to not damage your own kind, as they say. Right? Now, I would preach not to do it at all. But I'm just taking it back to a time where I remember growing up, hearing some of the older heads, external to my family unit, talk about these types of things. And these are the types of things that they would say. Like, not here, bro. 2 blocks over, take the L, go down that way, blah, 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 blah. Like there was certain things that they knew they was teaching the younger boys like how to move, right? Don't this immediate like 25, 50 mile radius, don't step in here because so and so. So there, that part of the conversation I think we do need to have as a group. But the black on black crime buzz phrase and the gaslighting, urban terrorism, and I'm not even gonna. That's just used to diminish the point, to try and avert your eyes. Let's not talk about the fact that your communities are over policed, because they have been over policed ever since we created criminal crime and criminal justice and all this other stuff, so-called systems, to substitute slavery. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that you are killing each other faster than we are. No, we're not. And the fact that we had to take a turn on that may be true. But again, that's not your business to come and tell me. I'm talking to you about the fact that we are over policed. We in here in this room, we about to go talk about that stuff that we doing to ourselves. But that's not for you to come in and tell me and push in my face and try to say and use it as a reason to not address the fact that your system is doing this to us continuously, like ever since Jim Crow. Like you're still doing that.
Response is the same to both of these, right? Because the common theme is, because the ask is, well, you should have more diversity in thought, right? But this is not diversity in thought. This is you representing the ideas and thoughts of a group that's exterior to us, and because they don't want to be perceived a certain way, they don't want to be perceived as racist, they are recruiting you to represent their idea to us so that we can't say that you're racist.
They're racist, right?
Yeah. So with the diversity of thought, like I agree, we do need diversity. And I would say that that means bringing in LGBTQ members. That means bringing in our trans people. That means bringing in women. That means bringing in even children and getting their thoughts and actually loving Black people as a group, not just your myopic view of the idyllic Black person in your utopia that you kind of use as escapism. But just actually loving Black people, right? And then that goes to with black on black, quote unquote, black on black crime. It's just the love for each other, right? Yeah. That natural affection was lost, but that natural affection was lost, in my opinion, my observation, through decades of chemical warfare, is what I call it. Since we're using trumped up terms of urban terrorism, chemical warfare, where now, because of that, the effects of that, you have so many people tied into the prison system, so many people tied into gang culture, so many people tied into addictions, where that are so powerful that you would sell your own kid, in order to get your next fix. That's going to wear down. If you're to that level of desperation, then you're not going to care about Joe Smith that's on the corner. What I mean? So that has to come back. I agree with that. But if you're the party doing this, you're the party participating in it.
You ain't talking to me about that.
to then say, because you put the gun in my hand, you shipped the drugs into the community, right? You did the redlining that created the ghetto. You pulled all the jobs out through deindustrialization, and now you're going to say, now that I'm poor and desperate, and I go and I rob a liquor store, it's like, look at all these.
Look at what you're doing. Look at you now. It's like, come on, bro.
But that's the same operations that we see abroad. Where you see a coup take place. It's more convenient to just kind of influence this person and that person. So they fight each other, and then that way you can take over and put in whatever government you want to install. It's the same thing. It's just done domestically as opposed to abroad.
What's it called? Black birding. They used to do over in the Pacific. Same thing. They just trained natives in the Pacific when they got over there, and they told those natives to go tell the story for them, and they did, and ended up like half of whole populations were destroyed, And nowadays people are praising the people who did that because they don't even know the story of the people who fought against it, because it was never perpetuated, right? Because they were destroyed. So yeah, I watch it happening on this side of the earth, with the same imperialist minds attacking the same people. So
Absolutely. Okay, so number 2, the proliferation of baby mamas.
what do you mean by that?
So, in this goes down a couple of different rabbit holes, but essentially, that the reason why the black community is the way it is because of so many. First of all, so many single mothers. So many, and using the statistic of, I think it's like 70% single mothers, and then the statistic associated with that, like if you are a child out of a single parent home,
then you're
more likely
doomed
to go to jail. You're more likely to commit violent crimes. All of those things. So then it's put on the mother. You know what I mean? The single mother or the baby mama, so to speak, as the reason why poverty exists, as the reason why there aren't any. There's so many laws being broken. All those these things. All of it gets put on the single mother.
This is silly, man. Like, that's, what do I think about that? Honestly, I kind of stopped thinking about it, because there are enough. How do I say this without sounding ignorant, really? Because I don't want to sound ignorant, but as a man, it's not my job to analyze how well the single mom is doing. It's not. It's my job to, when I am faced with this crossroads in my life, not to create a single mother. That's my job as a man when it comes to single mother versus not single mother, right? In those simple terms. If I am with a woman and I decide to have a child, she's not going to be a single mother because I did my due diligence. At some point as an adult, I have to take it upon myself, even if I couldn't get it as a child, to be responsible. Now, we could talk about the ways and we could talk about what that means and everything like that. But I kind of stopped trying to say yay or nay to single mother. Like, I don't believe that a single mother it should be on this list of top 5. I honestly don't. Because one, again, critically think about this. Did the single mother arrive at that point to be a single mother on her own? And if the answer is no, then how is it only her fault that this child is doomed, apparently? Are we going to say that? Are we going to say the single mother is a single mother because she chose to be? 9 times out of 10, no. And if that last 1% is yes, it's because of some other thing that this man or this other person, they just didn't hold up maybe an expectation, or they weren't a good fit, or what about the situations where single mothers exist simply because the relationship did not fit? How about that?
Right.
There wasn't no ill will. It just didn't fit. It just wasn't conducive to raising this child. I mean, we are grouping in too many things into a category and then making a judgment on that category, and then superimposing that judgment onto like all of society, or rather all of one particular group it's used against mostly, and that's us. But I cannot do it justice here in this time and this form. So I'm just going to say that I don't think this should be on the list at all. That is my primary response to that. Single mothers, baby mamas, whatever you want to call them, they should not be on this list at all, because half of that conversation is not even mine to have. And the other half that I am responsible for, I need to have with other men that I really want to have with the men that are creating these baby mamas. But nah, I don't think that this is like a problem. Like, nah, it's a situation again that we need to talk about, but it's not something that's like all of America or all of the West needs to like. We got to fix these. Like, what's his name? The black dude. What is his name, man? He was running for president early on, and I don't know why, but he was on Van Lathan. He was on Higher Learning. That black conservative. I can't remember his name now, but anyway, Larry Elder. The way that Larry Elder seems to believe that this is like this is the primary function of, the relationship between a black man and a black woman. Like the primary function of that is equals single mother, right? And then we need to fix that, and that's the biggest thing. No, I'm not Tim Way. I'm not of that mindset. So no, it shouldn't be on the list, but it is a conversation we need to have. So that's my answer. I'm sorry it was so short, and I got a little triggered because that question happened recently to me, like maybe 2 weeks ago. And it turned into an argument, which I didn't want it to, but it did, and I'm still a little emotional from that. So
no, I understand. It's an oversimplification fallacy.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's confusing correlation with causation. Right?
Yes.
Just because there's a correlative data where meaning, I look at this group of data and I look at people that are in the prison population. A lot of them, didn't have fathers in their life. And then I say, okay, and they're single mothers. Then I say, okay, because of this correlation, single mothers and prison population, that must mean that single mothers cause the prison population.
Absolutely.
I mean? And there's so many other variables that go into
Too many.
Right?
Too many.
You have to look at, first of all, is it the cause or is it the effect? Right?
Correct.
Because are the single mothers there because all of the men are in prison?
Right.
And not the other way around.
Exactly.
Is it that, because for me, it's going back, the crack epidemic to me cannot be underestimated as far as what it did to our community.
No.
So you look at that and you say, okay, you have people that were addicted to drugs. You have people that were selling the drugs. You have people that were victims of violence. All of these things happening at once. How could you not have, after a war, it was a war on drugs, you're going to have women and children because a lot of the men got caught up in that war, right? So then to say, it's the single mother's fault, and to kind of just completely ignore all those other things, all those other factors, to me is the height of it. To me, it's just misogyny. The only reason you could come to that conclusion is because you have an axe to grind against women. You want to gaslight them and make it seem like it's only their fault.
Absolutely.
Even though part of the people group that helps contribute to those conditions.
Absolutely. So I agree with you on that 100,000%. That's it. I ain't got nothing to say, but
moving on. All right, the number one reason for the issues in the black community is blind allegiance to the Democratic Party. Or blind allegiance to one party.
Yes. Yeah. Politically, I would argue this is number one. Politically, I would argue this is number one. Because spiritually, it's Christianity. Blind allegiance to one particular belief system, right? So I would argue that politically, that the blind allegiance to one party is the biggest. Yeah, that's the first one on this list I agree with. Wow. And its placement. Because here's the thing, right? Every other thing we've spoken about from 2, 3, 4, and 5 proves that this particular thing cannot exist. Number one can't exist for us to actually have growth. Number one is a problem. If 5, 4, 3, and 2 were things that we agree on, and such that the community should not be victims, but they also should not be blamed for identifying as victims in certain historical situations, because this was the truth. If we believe that lack of diversity is a problem, but it's a problem that we should talk about, it's not a problem that somebody should then weaponize against us. If we believe that, right, if we go down the list, we believe that urban terrorism, aka black on black crime, is something that, again, we need to talk about, but again, something that you should not be able to weaponize against us. And then we get to single mothers. Blind allegiance to one party means that each time that party has a conversation about any one of those things, regardless as to how they feel about it, you are going to align yourself with that party. And let's say, right, for the purpose of our conversation, it's a Democratic Party, like you said. Fine. What are their stances on the victim mentality? I'll tell you right now. They placate the group with buzzwords, weak legislation, and candidates that have no problem promising things that are not going to happen because the powers that be, the system doesn't allow that. Okay, so all of these topics are things that are spoken about during election season and no other time after that. So if you believe that all of these things are things that need to be dealt with within the community, but then turn around and entrust the dealings of these things to a party that has done nothing but show you that it will not deal with those things, then that's a detriment to the entire community. That's it. Like, lack of diversity. What has the Democratic Party, I would argue any party, right? Again, but we're talking about Democrats right now. Well, what have they done for diversity in the system for us?
No, how to phrase this? I agree that it is a problem. All of these things are problems. They're not. It's definitely not on my top one list.
No. I just politically,
No,
I think
I
number
understand.
one.
Because
Yeah.
the reason why I say that though is because of the nature. True, the Democratic Party has not done substantial change for the black community at all. A lot
Correct.
of times we give us symbolic wins,
Yes.
or
Yes.
promises that don't actually happen.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I agree with that, and a lot of the some of it's just straight patronizing behavior. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know, the way they advertise it, promote it. So I get that.
Vote
But-
for me or else you're not black. I mean, what does that mean? Like,
But I think the fallacy in putting this as number one is that it assumes that voting is what's going to save the black community.
oh
Right?
no, see, I agree with you. And I probably should have addressed that first. So yeah, I agree with you because I don't believe in voting either as a solution.
And I'm not anti-voting, you know, so I don't
No,
just
no,
do a
no,
recorded
no.
line. But what I'm saying, because we're in a binary system, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we say, okay, well, the biggest thing is your blind allegiance to the Democratic Party, but then the alternative, according to this binary system,
Is that
the
you're
Republican
Republican.
Party,
Yeah.
which also does not care
Does
about
not
black
do
people.
anything. Yeah.
Then I'm in a double bind where,
Yeah.
okay, so you're saying that the number one problem in the black community is a non-inquisitor.
Right.
Because either way, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why. But I agree wholeheartedly that blind allegiance. I would say I would stop the sentence there. Blind.
Yes,
allegiance.
that's why.
Yeah.
It kind of got missed, but I said blind allegiance to a political party to a party is always going to be detrimental for us.
Yeah.
like because we're not we do not exercise the necessary tools to utilize any party. To be honest,
Right.
number one, and number two, the systems that created these parties were not. Our interest was not in mind when they were being created. So how could we then turn around and use them for our benefit, right? So, you know, generally speaking, like allegiance to any American, arguably Western political party is just
Right.
to me ridiculous for a black person to even be a part of.
No, you hit the nail on the head though. Like when you started off saying, you know, if it was religion, it would be Christianity.
Yeah.
You hit it. It's like just blind allegiance, period. Like if you're not, because we're getting in this is the whole topic is critical thinking. So if you're abandoning your critical thinking and just saying, oh, because of what you did in 1965, I'm just going to continue to just put my chips in, or because
Yeah.
you know what I mean, because you believe in Jesus and you hold a Bible up in front of a church, I'm just going to vote for you because you believe you hold up a Bible, right?
Yeah,
That means you
yeah.
believe everything that's in it.
Which here's the fallacy of that, right? Politically speak, or even critical thinking about. Here's a party that loves to go into the church and into the black church and talk to us, right? But there's the other party likes to tote the church around. So what are you saying? Like, you believe in these guys because they come in, so the other ones stand outside with
Right.
white people. It's like, Come on, man. What are we talking about? They both saying the same thing. One guy is saying it inside with you. The other guy is saying it outside. Come on, man.
No, absolutely. Good stuff. So then the second, I guess, the follow-up question is, all right, out of that top five, okay, what would be your top five, or what's missing? Because we talked about some of the things would be on the top five, some of them wouldn't. But what would be, I guess, either the top five list, your top five list of issues facing the Black community, or let's say that was your top five. What are some additional issues that are missing that you think should be focused on?
I'm gonna say one, and it might be a cop-out answer.
Yeah.
Self-sustainability, self-reliance, knowledge of self. That we could superimpose that, right, from an individual level to a social level, group level, to a political, to a financial, to it, right? The concept or idea that I can do what's right for me and my family and be self-sufficient, right? I need to be able to translate that to every Black person in my block, right? I need to also be able to translate that to every Black person in my town, city, state, and then keep going, outer until we get to the point where we all understand that politically, maybe, let's say, since that's the easiest way to judge a group in this particular system, as far as results-driven things, we take a political landscape and we can drive it in a direction that benefits us. Or at a minimum, take things that would benefit us and then impose that onto the system and have it, reflect back on our community, and then we can use that to grow, right? Like everybody else is able to do, right? That, to me, the inability to do that, the unwillingness in some cases to even attempt it, is the most detrimental thing in my mind, because that would solve a lot of external issues while simultaneously providing the space and the time to solve the ones that are inward, that are internal. You understand what I mean by that?
No.
If we could somehow, right, find, it wouldn't take every single Black person, but most Black people to just sit in the same page long enough. Not the same line, not the same thought process, none of that, but just the same page. And then have all of us together read the same word, like the one concept, right? In 5 paragraphs. You got a group of people that stand up, and let's say you put a camera down, and each person's head is a dot. And each dot is a pixel, and each pixel is a part of a letter or a word or whatever. And all those words make up one page, because all Black people on the same page. I would argue that we could leverage that kind of power and actually get some change within our communities that will allow us to sit down and breathe for a moment, so that we can actually start to address the trauma, actually start to address the trauma-driven responses that our community has had, actually start to talk about, the real issues that we ourselves can handle, because at that point we would have the power to address them, right? So I think that our inability and unwillingness in some cases to leverage the natural power that we as humans have, that the system gives us, but because we were labeled as inhuman, the internalization of that and the proliferation of it generationally has created a situation where we don't even recognize. If they was to walk up to us and say, like the day somebody was to say, you are now a whole person, not 3/5 anymore, I don't even think Black people understand what that means, what kind of liberties they actually gain from that, as a group, I mean. Because we, like, as a group, have been held at a position of what's the word I'm looking for? We've been held at a position where we haven't been able to utilize these things for so long that when they're given, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to use it. We don't know what it means to use it. We don't even know if it applies. So I think that we just need to get to that leverage the things that everyone else leverages, every other group leverages in this country, in these systems, so that we can actually address ourselves for once and stop trying to tell other people how we need to do something and just leverage these things for ourselves so we can do them, period. And I think that's the biggest thing, our inability or unwillingness.
Self-determination.
Self-determination. I was going to drop the mic, but I got to hold my phone in my hand. So, because I don't know where my tripod is.
Man, this has been a great conversation. I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of your time. We said we were going to go.
No, I appreciate that.
Huh?
I said I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do one last question, and then we can move to close. What resources would you suggest to improve critical thinking surrounding like the issues that we've been discussing today?
Somebody in the comments earlier had said to question everything, right? Your biggest resource is your ability to question. I'm not going to sit here and list a bunch of books. You can Google it. You can talk to your peers. You can talk to people who you respect. You can talk to people. You can do that. Your biggest resource with critical thinking is your ability, your willingness rather, to actually have the question. Because a lot of times the question comes up and people go, I don't want to think about it. Some people don't have time. Some people, and it turns into laziness, right? But I would argue the biggest resource is just your willingness to have the question, to question it, go with it, like keep going with the question. Don't let it go by the wayside. Write it down if you have to, man. Ask someone if you don't want to do the research yourself, like you can't do it in the moment. Ask somebody what they think, and then start having the conversation. But the ability to just allow that question is what I think the biggest resource for critical thinking is. You can always find a book, you can always find a resource, but the biggest asset is the ability to just allow that, you as a person, allow that question to run its course. If you understand what I mean.
Reflection is the mother of the revolution. Revolution is just the sun for the next generation. Generations are just light for the memory for countless babies born each morning. So where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line in time to even picture a timeline where by definition a line has no beginning or ending? No, each morning is just another reason to lose count of a time that never existed. Because while we pretend we walk reality in straight lines, the planet itself spins in cycles, leaving revolution obvious. Dancing circles around a rectangular concept of progress we like to call God, praying salvation white, creating sacred shapes to keep the colors in the corner and the blacks on the fringes and the money on the center. Building a pyramid of interest that keeps its inventors walking through life like it's a shadow of death, when it's really just a shadow of death, cast by skyscrapers that keep success held high, like a candle in the sky, reflecting the sunshine, providing just enough false light to keep the peasants and hoodlums scrambling to the breadcrumbs, left to keep the righteous backsliding to the semi-line to hell. And I'm wondering why revolution is a four-letter word, yet the way people profanely spell it, like it's filler, like it's offensive, like it's anything else than just another word, rusting on a shelf of good intentions, like love, love life, life free. This is what they taught me and told me was tangible. A few years after I learned that I was black and what black really means, before I took a pencil in my hand for the first time and tried to sketch America, or at least what I thought it could be. I took my own blank sheet of this country, my own little state of being, my own little city of influence, and I thought that if I could just sketch blackness correctly, if I could just make the color walk in sharp lines and complex shades, if I could just express how beautifully black and white could coexist on paper, all the could haves and would haves and should haves would start to amount to shit, and intentions would accumulate into what I did and what I have and what is happening. But what I found was that the world wasn't framed in black and white, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't describe like love, love life, life free, with those means only two-dimensional streams of pain and history that keep repeating themselves in current events. Because composing a revolution is like trying to draw an ocean that can show which way the water flows. Yeah, the tide is going out, but the waves are still coming in and around and at you, and they're not staying in the shorelines. They're crashing right on top of your neighborhood, and the riptide is dragging children out of their schools, and fathers out of their families, and mothers out of their minds. And you can see them trying to tread water, straining just to stream, with their lungs half filled, drowning from the very same substance every other person in America is drinking and enjoying at this very same moment right now. Freedom. Or at least, if they thought it would be. And so I traded my pencil in for a paintbrush and left revolution for things like truth and meaning and understanding and cooperation, things that could make freedom more safe. And I thought that if I could just color my canvas in such a way that it explained diversity vivid and depicted democracy real, even pictured peace profitable, that the people, all the people that would look, all the people that would listen, and the people that would live, and stop killing each other over colors and shapes and sizes and dimensions, like love life free, like me, capturing every color that I see in the aerosol can trapped behind my teeth, trying to spray paint dreams faster than wind can take them from me, watching as they vaporize before my very eyes, before they barely leave my lips, before the wall can ever wear my thoughts or receive my gifts, cause America does not exist. It isn't real. This new world has always been here and yet never tangible. Told like those fairy tales my teacher told me a few years before I learned I was black. What black really means. Like love life free. Like this country with no lines, in the hand of a president that doesn't know how to draw, scribbling a sketchbook so soaked in blood, the pages disintegrating every time pen meets paper. So they bleached it on the whites that was originally woven white anyway, and let borders die until the colors went off the corners, put in concentration camps. And the blacks went off the fringes, placed in penitentiaries. And the money, oh no, let's not forget about the money. It's put back in the center, and everything is right wing, no matter left or the left extreme, or whatever. As long as it flies and blends into a sky so covered in clouds, population can't see its ground. They just walk on faith and pray to a God that lives in a box and can't define his own face or her own sex or its own shape. Like love life free like America, bombing poverty with food, free to choose who eats and who dies, free to define what freedom is, and stapled to the eyelids of little kids who never learned that sleeping in intelligence is far worse than walking in ignorance. So they walk freely off of cliffs, sleep freely off of cliffs, knowing full well where it is. They just don't care. They just don't care because they see what I see.
Much to say between the moments of our games and repartee. There's never much to read between the lines of what we need and what we'll take. There's never much to talk about or say aloud, but say it anyway.
They woke up each morning to look in the mirror and see a dream lying behind its teeth, smiling like it wants to see something happy or funny or inspiring, but instead it just stares and grins and stays silent because it's not really there. It's just a lie passed down from parent to parent, like the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus, or something to keep the little kids moving along through the grades, anxiously waiting the present like it'd be anything more than a toy. That's why I play games with my time and look surprised when it's so broken. When the minutes are bleeding out of its beady eyes, and the months are sticking together like fur, coated with what used to taste like candy, but now just resembles the cavity that torments my waning smile. And I'm old and I'm gray inside, with black and white so smeared on my soul and psyche, it became my religion, raping the body of my sanity until truth and lie became the last of the relatives of my family. So I traded in my paintbrush for a son, and I thought to myself, if I could just teach this one baby that God has blessed me with to like love, to search for it as if it were a lost brother or sister, to want as if it were the first teddy bear I placed in his crib, if I could just raise this one child to love life, to admire and cherish it, as if it were the finest art, to treat it as like it was priceless, and collect every piece of it, to learn the forgotten craft of creating life. Life would be free. My life. All life would be free through my son, and would be free through my reflection. And that's when I realized